Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today, as usual, we're going to be talking about Agatha All Along and the Penguin. We've also got quite a few news stories to go over, and our usual On the Horizon segment where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. Let's start there with our On the Horizon segment.
On the horizon. On the horizon.
As I mentioned, On the Horizon is where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. And we've got a few things that are kind of interesting here. I kind of fluffed out the list, though, because a little bit of a slim week this next week. But wanted to get a few of them in there, so had to flesh it out a bit. We're going to start things off. Life is Strange Double Exposure comes out on Tuesday, October 29th on PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, and Switch. Time Cut. This is the horror movie that we described previously as Back to the Future, but horror, when we were talking about like the, how they're doing the trend in horror movies of like, it's Groundhog's Day, but horror. Or it's A Wonderful Life, but it's horror. And Time Cut's the one that's kind of about a girl going back in time and encountering her sister who had been murdered and trying to like stop the murders. That's coming on Wednesday, October 30th on Netflix. Shadows of the Damned, Hulla Remastered from Grasshopper Manufacture themselves, from Suda51 himself, is coming on Thursday, October 31st on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Switch. This is the year of the Suda51 remaster, because they already did like the Lollipop Chainsaw one. And didn't they earlier this year do the No More Heroes 3 for like the other systems? Was that this year or was that last year?
Yeah, I think it was last year.
But still, it's a lot of Suda51 games in a short span.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Doc of Chucky comes out on Friday, November 1st on Shudder. This is the
nice
documentary about the Chucky franchise.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Chucky fans, I'm speaking to one right now. You got something to enjoy there.
Absolutely. Something to soothe the wound of having Chucky being canceled.
Yep. Here, which is the new movie from Robert Zemeckis, and it's basically like a reunion of the entire Forrest Gump team. It's like the same writer, the same director, Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. All
same caterer.
Same caterer. Same grips,
Yeah, same grip, yeah.
There was somebody on the crew of Forrest Gump that was pregnant. She's been holding that baby this whole time. She's pregnant with the same baby for this.
Yep, for this.
This is the one, it kind of had an interesting trailer because it seems like everything is shot from a single angle.
Yeah.
And it shows like a huge span of time because like most of the movies like following this kid from like his childhood to like his old age and like building a relationship with somebody and taking ownership of that house that he grew up in and living there with her and all that stuff. But they also show like dinosaurs and like tribal periods and colonialism going through there. And it's all from like this same angle. It's like the camera got in this one position and they built this house and everything around the camera and everything happened over the span of millennia in this like one area. So it's kind of interesting conceptually and just the team involved makes it pretty fascinating. But that's coming on Friday, November 1st in theaters. A lot of other stuff coming in theaters too. Absolution. This is the new Liam Neeson old man action movie, also coming to theaters on Friday, November 1st. This one might be his last though. He announced that he's retiring. I don't know if he's got another action movie like that he's already got in the can waiting to come out after this or something, but he said he's not making any more. That he's done making action movies because he's in his 70s now.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
He's like, I gotta stop at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
A Real Pain. This is the movie, I believe it's directed by Jesse Eisenberg and it stars Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. And, it's kind of an Oscar bait movie, I think. That's coming also on Friday, November 1st to theaters. And Blitz, which has Saoirse Ronan, and it's about a World War II, it's about the London bombings that happened during World War II. And that's coming also on Friday, November 1st to theaters. That's it for our On the Horizon section, and now we're going to move on to On Beat. On Beat is our news section, and we're going to be starting off with The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum, which was rumored to be at one point being split into 2 movies. This was based on something that Sir Ian McKellen said in an interview. Turns out that's not the case. They were making The Hunt for Gollum as a single movie, but they're making another Lord of the Rings live-action movie, and both of them apparently involve Gandalf heavily. So I guess that's why Ian McKellen had something to say about it, because he's going to be involved, I guess.
Right,
he made
yeah.
he made a kind of a funny comment about how, they better hurry up and start this because I'm not getting any younger. He's like in his 80s now. So
Yeah. Like if they're going to do it, they better do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the last movie is going to be called The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf in Hospice or something. I mean.
Oh my God. Yeah, right. Oh man.
Yeah. He's getting old, They gotta get through this because it's not just a matter of like if he'll be around, but like is he going to be able to move around and stuff capably? He's that's pretty old, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like they want to do it, and not have to recast, they gotta get move on.
Yeah, I think he was also recently injured. He was doing a stage play and he was recently injured, so it's like,
oh yeah,
they really gotta get moving with this stuff. Our next news story is that Josh Brolin has been cast as the villain opposite Glenn Powell in Edgar Wright's remake or readaptation. I'm not exactly sure what he's going for, of The Running Man. This was a Stephen King book that was then turned into a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger that was kind of very different from the book, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if Edgar Wright is like remaking the movie or readapting the book. It could be either one.
I have no idea.
Edgar Wright's kind of a cinephile, so I could see him being somebody that would want to actually remake the movie,
Right, yeah. I have no clue. I haven't actually been following this. So, I have no clue, what Edgar Wright wants to do with it. Edgar Wright is, one of those people. He's an auteur, right?
Yeah.
So he's most likely going to do his own take on the material.
Edgar Wright does what Edgar Wright does because it's what Edgar Wright needs to do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So who knows? I actually haven't seen the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's one of the few Arnold Schwarzenegger films I haven't seen.
You gotta see it, just for the puns. Just for the puns alone, you have to see it. He had the split. You just have to see it. Our next news story is, this kind of is in 2 parts. So I'm gonna read the news story as I wrote it down initially, and then I'm gonna add in what happened later.
Okay.
So the first part of the news story is that Amazon is parting ways with showrunner Rafe Judkins, who was the showrunner of Wheel of Time, but he was also supposed to be the showrunner for the God of War adaptation that was in development. And they parted ways with him, and they said creative differences, they want to go in a different direction. So that was the first story. And it's interesting because I did a rant on this podcast a while ago about how Amazon and Netflix and some of these other big streamers have been hiring on very inexperienced showrunners. Some don't even have writing experience before. They're just out of nowhere. They pitched them and just got hired off the street or something. It's weird. They've been hired very, very inexperienced showrunners to handle massive budget properties. They did this with the Rings of Power. Also a bunch of kind of unknowns that were involved in showrunning the Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings series. That's the most expensive TV show ever, Netflix did it with The Witcher, very inexperienced writer. She had a few credits to her name, and then all of a sudden she's gonna be a showrunner on Netflix's answer to Game of Thrones. It's what? You're not gonna bring on somebody a little bit more experienced to kind of manage your money, to make sure that things are going well? I kind of had a rant about that because I just said it's kind of weird the way they're doing that. I understand they're prioritizing control over the project over having a very competent showrunner involved in the project. But in the end, if no one's going to watch your show, you're just going to cancel it, which is what's happened with most of these shows that these companies have been doing this with. They launch really big budget projects, very inexperienced showrunners, and then they end up falling apart. Nobody really cares about them. They fall apart and then they cancel them and that's it. So it's okay, so they're parting ways with the guy whose only thing on his resume is Wheel of Time. And Wheel of Time was pretty heavily criticized, pretty maligned. I think it was canceled. I'm pretty sure it was canceled. I think it might have one more season left before it ends, but it just never really got any attention, especially for the budget it had. But then another news story hit, a few days later, saying who was going to be replacing Rafe Judkins as showrunner. And it's Ronald D. Moore.
Yeah, which very interesting.
Because that's exactly my problem with these, the Amazon and Netflix shows that have been doing this, is hiring somebody very unexperienced that doesn't really know what they're doing and doesn't really know how to properly convey a story in this kind kind of way, like doesn't have the experience for it. Ronald D. Moore is like the polar opposite of that. He's a phenomenal showrunner. His experience goes all the way back to like the early 90s. I think he started writing on Next Generation, and then he was involved in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I think he was somewhat involved a little bit, I think, in the early stages of Voyager, and then he left instead of doing that and focused on Battlestar Galactica, the 2004 remake, which is huge, just absolutely massive, beloved sci-fi series. After that, he's done a ton of different projects, all of them pretty high profile. He did Outlander at Stars that got a lot of attention. He's, I think it's still running, doing For All Mankind at Apple TV Plus. He was one of like the first big showrunners brought on to that service. Like before they had, what's the one really popular show on Apple TV Plus with Jason Sudeikis?
Ted
Lasso, yeah.
It took me way too long to come
way before Ted Lasso, like For All Mankind was greenlit. It was one of like the first really big kind of shows.
Yeah.
For Apple TV Plus.
It was like one of the first big shows, like from their like I believe from their Apple TV's like initial slate.
It was like that and like the morning show, I think. Those were like the two big ones.
Yeah.
There were some other ones that I think got canceled. There was one that was supposed to be with like Dr. Dre was involved.
There was like a C with
Jason Momoa. Yeah. Ronald D. Moore was handling that. He's now going to be the showrunner for the God of War adaptation. So that's fantastic news. He's a tried and tested, great showrunner, has, a lot of beloved fanfare projects in his background. Like I said, Battlestar Galactica alone is like a resume in itself. But yeah, he's going to be taking over as showrunner on this. So that's interesting. That's fascinating. Not just because he's such a big name, but because it's the exact problem that I was illustrating that companies like Amazon and Netflix have. And it almost feels like Amazon's learned and they're addressing that now. So I don't know if they're just going to be reaching out to bigger people. Maybe it has to do with Apple TV Plus and the fact that Apple TV Plus was reaching out to a lot of showrunners and more experienced people, and they've had a lot of success, and they've been kind of the talk of the town recently. And they've been doing kind of what Amazon wanted to be doing, but failed at. And now Apple TV Plus has become that kind of critical darling streaming service that Amazon wanted to be. So maybe we're learning a lesson from that.
Maybe, yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Our next news story, Tom Holland is in talks, possibly more than just in talks, to star with Matt Damon in Christopher Nolan's new film that's completely secretive. Nobody knows anything about it. All we know about it is that Matt Damon's in it, and now apparently Tom Holland is either in talks or he's got the role for another character in this movie. We don't know anything about what it's about.
No, obviously it's very secretive.
Most Christopher Nolan projects are pretty secretive.
I just thought Tom Holland was an interesting choice for a lead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Tom Holland has been trying to break out as a big name dramatic actor. I don't think it's quite happened for him yet. He's done a few projects.
He's Spider-Man.
But he's trying to break away from that. Like,
he's trying to break away from the typecasting of that type of character.
He doesn't want to be known for just Spider-Man, right? So
yeah, he wants to be known for Uncharted.
Yeah, so he's done a few projects and stuff, but it's been very uneven so far for him, and so I think landing the lead in a Nolan film could be the big boost that his career needs. So I mean, good for him. If he has landed this, I'm rooting for him. I mean, love Christopher Nolan films, so hopefully this turns out to be great.
Yeah, we have no idea what this is. I'm guessing it's more along the lines of a Tenet or a Inception or that kind of movie, because it doesn't seem like it's part of a franchise like Batman was, and it doesn't seem like it's a biopic like Oppenheimer.
Right, yeah.
Because that was they weren't being secretive really about Oppenheimer, they were just kind of revealing that because it's a biopic. So this looks like it's going to be more along the lines of what Nolan's more known for day to day. When people think about a Christopher Nolan film, what they mostly think about is stuff like Inception or, just these kind of weird, heavy concept sci-fi kind of movies,
Yeah, exactly. Christopher Nolan, he likes to do these high concept pictures, and so it's probably going to be something along those lines.
Yeah, just based on the fact that they're being secretive about it, I think means it's probably along those lines. And probably filmed in IMAX. It's another Christopher Nolan staple. Our next news story is that Mike Flanagan, who is the kind of showrunner, creative force behind a lot of horror limited series at Netflix, and also he's done a lot of Stephen King adaptations. He's currently adapting the Dark Tower series. That's kind of been one of those impossible projects that everyone kind of fails fails at, but he's been plugging away at that. He's now also going to be adapting a series for Carrie at Amazon. This is interesting because Amazon's also involved in the Dark Tower project that he's working on. And if you know anything about Dark Tower, you know that it like connects all Stephen King's works.
Right. Oh, yeah. The Stephen King universe, like, is loosely connected. Yeah, it just usually, like, Mike Flanagan's just, like, a big fan of Stephen King. But interesting, I'm not particularly interested in Carrie. I was never really, like, a big fan of Carrie. I think, like, it's a fun novel. It's a good horror story. It's just, like, solid story that hits on themes of being, like, an outsider, going through, like, all the emotions you go through, like, growing up as a teenager, but being an outsider, being bullied, and kind of twist that, like, revenge fantasy, where, like, it just turns into a horror where, like, she just slaughters everybody at the end. I mean, it's fine. It's a pretty straightforward story.
It's been adapted a lot.
It's been adapted a lot, yes. And, I mean, personally, for me, it's just, like, one of the least interesting Stephen King stories. It's also, I believe it was also, like, one of his earliest stories to get adapted. Like, one of the first. I think it was, like, the first.
Came out in, like, the 70s, I think. I think it's either that or, like, maybe The Shining.
No, I think it was Carrie, actually.
But it's from, like, that era. It's from, like, the early Stephen King era.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because this is Mike Flanagan. He's done a lot of great work.
Yeah, Mike Flanagan's fantastic. That's a major reason to be interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we'll have to see kind of what happens with this. If there's like an intentional tie-in to, this is going to be the Mike Flanagan, Stephen King cinematic universe, since he's doing Dark Towers, and Dark Towers is kind of like the original cinematic universe thing. So, I don't know. We'll have to see how that turns out. Our last news story before we get to trailers is a sad one. Sad, but maybe for the best. And that is that Blade has been removed from Marvel's schedule for upcoming movies. So this has been a very troubled project. They parted ways with like 2 or 3 directors that were supposed to be involved in this. There were some like leaks about like what the script was originally supposed to be about, and it sounded horrible. There was like a lot of fan backlash saying like, no wonder this project hasn't taken off. No wonder directors keep leaving and stuff. This is like a horrible idea. Whereas like not even really going to focus on Blade as a character. It was going to focus on other characters, and there's all sorts of stuff that this project has just been in like development hell. And you got to feel bad for Mahershala Ali.
Totally. I totally do, because like this was like his big thing, and they fumbled the bag so badly. I don't understand it. I don't understand how difficult the concept is, like, of a Blade movie. I saw a comment on Twitter just now that was like, I understand making movies is difficult, and sometimes things don't come together right, but like also Marvel is a studio that's been shooting out movies like a bazooka. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a simple premise. You get badass vampire hunter killing vampires. Like, I don't know how it's like this hard to get the movie made.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to hear the story. And I'm kind of like at a point now where after like all this, where like I was excited by the prospect of Marvel Studios making a Blade movie. I am no longer excited at the prospect of Marvel Studios making a Blade movie. I'm kind of like, okay, never mind.
I think I'm still excited at the prospect of it. I'm kind of glad that this was removed from the schedule, because we kept hearing these reports about like all the problems happening in development, and then they'd still be like, yeah, but it's still coming out next year. And it's like, wait, what?
Right, yeah.
And so I'm kind of glad that, this was at least delayed, maybe more, maybe it was outright canceled, but I just really hope that this is them going back to the drawing board and really finding out their priorities on this and making something interesting.
Oh, but absolutely. Yeah, like hopefully they do. They just need to come up with a film that just captures that same energy from the first Wesley Snipes Blade film. They just need to do that.
I think one of the things that made the MCU great in its early days, I think Marvel's might have lost a little sight of. And that's that, like, almost every movie that was coming out in the MCU was, like, fit into the tropes and stylings of, like, other existing genres.
Yeah.
Many of them that had been kind of abandoned. Like, genres that were popular in the past and just weren't really popular anymore. I mean, like, my favorite example to bring up is, Winter Soldier is like a 70s espionage movie. Guardians of the Galaxy is like a group of lovable rogues. It's a lovable rogue space adventure. That goes all the way back to like the original, like, Star Wars movies before it became, like, so big and unwieldy.
Oh, yeah,
And,
absolutely.
like, that's kind of was what Marvel did. Like, they kind of looked at all their projects as, like, it's kind of like how we were talking about that one movie that's coming out, that time cut, where we were saying it's Back to the Future, but horror. It's like, you know, Winter Soldier was, it's 70s espionage, but Marvel, you know? I think that's kind of was the winning strategy for the MCU, and I think they kind of need to go back to that, you know? They need to really kind of think about things in that way of, like, let's just make, like, a really solid movie that happens to have these characters in it, and then make that fit, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of, like, just, what's our next thing to do with these characters, you know?
Right, yeah, because I'm not sure what they're doing. Are they trying to, like, try to figure out how Blade fits into, like, the overall universe, or like, oh, what's this? So we're telling this multiverse story. I mean, that's just overthinking things, and if they're doing that, like, obviously, it's not gonna work. It's just fine if Blade is its own thing, and we just say, oh yeah, Spider-Man also exists. Like, it's fine, you can do that.
Yeah, you can make references to the blip, and you can make, you know, you can, like, make references to things that happened in that world to let us know that it's in that world, but you don't need to really, like...
It doesn't need to be an integral, like, part of, like, the multiverse storyline. It doesn't need to be,
Nobody in Marvel knows anything about vampires, you know? Like, that's...
Right, yeah.
It's fine for it to be disconnected.
Yes, exactly.
But, yeah, so, like I said, good news, bad news. It's sad that it's not coming, but it's probably for the best.
Right, oh yeah. Like, hopefully, when it does finally come, it lives up to expectations.
Yeah, definitely. That's it for our regular news stories, and now we're going to move on to trailers. We've got, like, 7 trailers to go over now? Quite a few. There's some big ones that came out, some really good ones, too.
This was a pretty solid batch of trailers this week.
A few that came out of nowhere that looked really good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Some that I've been anticipating and just haven't seen anything for in a while, and some were kind of expected, you know, and they're big ones. That's where we're going to start, with Creature Commandos. That's a big one. We kind of expected it. We were going into New York Comic Con. We knew James Gunn was going to be there. It's the first thing from the new DCU, so we knew they were going to have to show something for that soon.
Yeah,
We'd only seen, like, screens before, but now we got, like, an actual trailer. I think the most interesting thing is that this is very much along the lines of, like, the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like a very dark, bloody, you know, I got a lot of Invincible vibes watching it.
Yeah, there's a lot of Invincible vibes. Yeah, this is basically Suicide Squad 2.0.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like Suicide Squad meets Universal Monsters.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's the same premise and setup, only this time, like, Waller knows she's prevented from using people, but, the loophole is these aren't people.
Yeah. What's interesting about this, and this is all, like, we knew about before, but it's just interesting watching this trailer with this in our minds, is that this is part of the canon for the DCU.
Yes.
This is not like, you know, this is the cartoon and the movies are separate.
Yeah, no, James Gunn has stated before, like, everything they do under DCU is canon in the universe under that umbrella, even if it's animated or live action. He also stated that all the actors doing the voices in the animated
are going to be the same
features.
ones doing it in live action, yeah.
Yes. So, for example, here, Frank Grillo is the voice of Rick Flag Sr. in Creature Commandos, but he is going to appear as Rick Flag Sr. in both Superman and Peacemaker Season 2 live action.
Yeah, it's really interesting from that perspective, but also just because I can't imagine that they're going to go for the really dark and gritty tone with, like, say, the new Superman movie that, you know, like Zack Snyder did, or that even that this has in it. So it's kind of interesting seeing, like, okay, Creature Commandos is starting the DCU, and it's violent as hell.
Yes, it is.
And the next project out of the gate after that is Superman, right?
Right, yeah. But
James I can't imagine they're going violent with Superman.
No.
You know?
Well, James Gunn also said at New York City Comic Con, he said, there's no enforced aesthetic for the DCU. He said, there's no mandate that every project needs to follow the same overall aesthetic. He said, every project is going to be different. Every project is going to be its own thing, but it's all going to exist within this universe. But we're not going to be like saying like, oh, everything has to be gritty.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that grittiness doesn't make sense, especially with a lot of DC properties, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. And I think that was like the major problem with like the Snyderverse, which were like everything's seem to like have that same tone, even where like it didn't really make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting thing is in Creature Commandos, Alan Tudyk is voicing Dr. Phosphorus. He's basically the Dr. Manhattan analog. But James Gunn also revealed at New York City Comic Con that Alan Tudyk also has a secret role in Superman, and it's not Dr. Phosphorus.
That's interesting because that goes directly against what he had said before about,
It doesn't.
There would just be one actor for each character. There'd only be like one actor would play one character and that would be it. Like that
He
was
never
kind of
said
what,
that.
I'm pretty sure he said something along those lines.
The only thing he said about that is like if an actor was voicing a character in animation, they'd be like playing that character in live action.
Okay.
He never said one character because like Sean Gunn already has multiple roles in the new DCU.
That's
like
true.
Sean Gunn is Weasel, and he's also like got other parts.
It'll be interesting. We'll have to see if some other James Gunn standbys. He likes to cast a lot of the same people over and over again.
Yes,
some of them show up. Michael Rooker was in the Suicide Squad, so
so he could show up in this too. Who knows?
But our next trailer was for Dune Prophecy. Now we've gotten a few like teasers and kind of trailers, but they were all kind of vague. They just kind of were showing, hey, look, we got all the same special effects. We got like the same big world. We're playing with the same tone and the same music. That's kind of like all we really got from the past teasers for this. And now we're kind of getting more of an idea of the story. And I think it's kind of interesting. You're going with, I mean, as somebody who's never read the Dune books, whose experience with Dune is pretty much limited to the new movies from Denis Villeneuve. So that's kind of my only real knowledge of Dune, besides things that were just in the pop culture zeitgeist before, like sandworms and stuff. But Dune Prophecy looks kind of interesting because it looks like it's kind of the early stages of that sisterhood and kind of the political maneuvering that they do behind the scenes. That's like a big part of what's going on in the Dune movies. But this kind of seems like the early stages of these conspiracies and plots. And it looks like there's a character, a very like Jason Momoa-esque character played by the guy from Vikings, if you ever watched that show. He was the lead in Vikings, but he's kind of like presenting an opposite end of that spectrum, like somebody that's kind of against this order. And so you're kind of getting the idea of like, how did this order ended up being taken kind of over and kind of controlling everything from the shadows. But we see like this looks like it's kind of the first challenge that they face.
Yeah.
So it looks pretty interesting. Like the story's kind of coming together for it. I'm curious how involved Denis Villeneuve is in this. Cause we know he did the first two movies. He's doing the third one and then he's stopping. He's already like announced that he's stopping, but that he also is setting things up to continue with another director.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm wondering how involved he is in this and if, some of his kind of vision and aesthetic is going to make it in besides like the real base level stuff.
Yeah. I have no clue.
But that is Dune Prophecy. This is going to be the second big tie-in property because this was a whole plan for Max, like in HBO with the streaming service. And the first one we're getting from that is one we're going to be talking about tonight as well, which is Penguin. And Dune Prophecy is the next one. And then along with that strategy is also like the Harry Potter series and like there's other stuff the It spin-off series, but this is like the second one of those like that whole initiative that Max put into motion. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I'm definitely going to watch it.
Oh, same. I mean, obviously.
Next up, we got a trailer for Wolfman. We had a teaser for this before. It was pretty much just like the logo and like a few quick shots, I think.
Yeah, this time we got like more of a full trailer.
We got kind of a story, what's going on. Yeah. So it looks like it's about like a family and they get attacked by something and it's kind of a vague threat. We know it's like a werewolf, but in the process of that, the patriarch of the family gets scratched and he's like slowly turning and just becoming less and less himself. And they're kind of like really focusing in on kind of the psychological horror aspect of like having somebody you love and care about that's like a member of your family.
Yeah, turn on you.
Yeah, just become somebody foreign, and a threat.
Yeah, which is a really interesting twist on the subject.
Yeah, definitely. But that looks pretty good. Next, we got a trailer for something that I've personally been waiting for for since I read the log line about it. When this was first kind of announced as being in development, I was like, oh, I am so in for this. And that is The Electric State. I believe this is an adaptation of a book. I'm not really familiar with the book, but I just remember reading the description about it being kind of like 80s retrofuturism. And it's like a post-apocalyptic after like a war with robots.
I love like the robots are look like 50s, 60s, like Art Deco, like, statues or whatever, like mascots.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that episode of the Treehouse of Horror of The Simpsons where all the mascots came to life.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It reminds me exactly of that. Like, it's like, they don't look like traditional robots, like.
Yeah. They're not like slick, techie looking things. So like, definitely. And it's definitely going for that retrofuturism. And it has that kind of like, 50s kind of thing like you're talking about there, but like the cultural aesthetic is very like 80s.
Yeah. Very 80s, yeah.
Which is like really cool. Like the idea of this kind of post-apocalypse happening in the 80s, kind of, with like this retrofuturism angle. It's just, that really inspired me when I read the synopsis.
It's really visually unique. It makes it look visually distinct and unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be upfront, like I like the leads. I like Chris Pratt. I think Chris Pratt, like he's a solid actor. He can do drama and he can do comedy. Like at the drop of he can flip between both at the drop of a hat. He does action. Like he's the perfect lead for something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got the girl from Stranger Things, and she's good.
Millie Bobby Brown, yeah.
Millie Bobby Brown, yes, thank you.
And this is being dubbed by the Russos.
Yeah, and the Russo brothers are fantastic directors. So I don't know, like it looks great to me. This is definitely like one of my most and this is like a Netflix film, surprisingly enough. This should be in theaters.
Yeah.
This should be in theaters, but I mean,
it looks like this movie was made for me.
You're right, yeah.
It looks like somebody said, well, let's make a movie just for Tyson.
They scanned your brain and they mined your subconscious and they formulate the perfect movie for you.
Yeah, it looks cool. Like, I'm really excited about it. Next film we're going to be talking about is Look Back. This is an anime movie. Again, this is straight to streaming. I believe this is on Prime.
No, I believe this is about a young girl. I believe she's in high school and she's aspiring to be like a manga artist.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's kind of her, and she has like a relationship with somebody else who's also an artist, and it's kind of like exploring that parallel of like passion for like a job, but also kind of like the idea of growing out of things and like growing out of dreams.
Right. And she has like, people around her, like her parents telling her like, like it's a silly idea to draw manga for like a living and that she should be considering real career options. Stuff like that, This
is based off of a one-shot manga. So one-shot manga just means it's like a single thing, It's not like an ongoing series. It's a singular thing that was done by the creator of Chainsaw Man. So that's kind of crazy.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah, very, very different.
Yeah, very different tone, but Chainsaw Man was really good. It was a really good series, and there was like a heart to Chainsaw Man. Beneath all the violence and gore and all the kind of crazy genre aesthetic that's going on in Chainsaw Man, there's like this real kind of heart and this real kind of creepiness in certain characters and stuff that's like permeates throughout it. That's like beyond what you just see on the surface level. And that gives me hopes that this is going to be interesting. Not that it's going to be like Chainsaw Man at all. I don't think it is at all. It's just going to be a drama, but that it's going to kind of have like that kind of heart that Chainsaw Man actually does have kind of under the surface, but like in a more concentrated, more direct way, rather than being under the surface of a bunch of other stuff. And it's, it's a manga artist writing a story about somebody dealing with the idea of maybe having to give up her dreams of being a manga artist, So you get that kind of passion involved. It's like watching a movie about filmmaking made by like an auteur director. It's the same kind of idea. Like that Steven Spielberg movie that came out recently. I can't remember the name of it. The one that's like semi-autobiographical about like him and how he discovered wanting to be a filmmaker and about his family and stuff. It's kind of like along those lines. It's like maybe semi-autobiographical and dealing with that kind of idea. And that kind of shows you that there's like passion involved in the story, which is going to make it like like an emotional journey, I think, for the kind of topic that it's covering. I've also heard very good things about the one-shot manga that this is based on. And the animation itself looks fantastic, so it's beautifully animated.
Right, yeah.
Our next trailer was for Interior Chinatown. This kind of came completely out of nowhere. It's the guy from Silicon Valley and Ronnie Chang from The Daily Show. And it's like just a crazy dream sequence, weird, series. And it's just a limited series. Yeah. Like, I thought it was a movie at first, but it's a limited series. It just looks really inventive. I like the idea that either the main character is detached from reality at points, or we're just kind of getting a visual aesthetic of like the way he thinks or his like fantasies. Something.
Right, yeah, like we don't really know like from the trailer, but it's like Jimmy O Yang, you know, like he plays the main character who's like, he's just like a nobody, random guy in Chinatown, you know, he's working like at his family's restaurant, just really nobody who has dreams of like, you know, he has fantasies of being somebody. And then like all of a sudden out of nowhere, Chloe Bennett is in this. She plays this like drop dead gorgeous detective who like just comes in and immediately like wants his help on a case because like nobody knows Chinatown like better than he does apparently. You know, and we don't, and so the premise is like he's teamed up with her working this case, and then like all this fantastic stuff starts happening. And again, like you said, like the way it's framed, we don't know if like these are fantasies he's having, or maybe the whole detective storyline is one of his fantasies, you know, like, and maybe this is just about.
Yeah, is he crazy and detached from reality, or is he like just kind of having fantastical daydreams?
Right, yeah.
That kind of interrupt the process of what's going on, you know? And it's interesting and it looks really cool and just kind of came out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of coming out of nowhere, we got a trailer for Love Hurts starring Ki Hugh Kwan our favorite from The Goonies and from Indiana Jones.
And this is like another John Wick like. He plays a guy who's like a realtor, but turns out like he used to be an assassin and he left that life to live a normal life, you know, like, and he kind of like had forgotten about like his previous life until like he's reminded of it, and he's pulled back in to resist like this crime gang that's like being run by his brother, his ruthless brother. No, it looks fun. It looks like a real fun action movie.
Yeah.
People don't know it, but like He Kwang, he's a martial artist. He's like a stunt coordinator and stuff, you know, for movies for like a long time, you know, doing like martial arts stunts and stuff. And so
we kind of know him more as like a child actor. It's like,
we know him more as a child actor and stuff. Yeah, we don't really know that side of it. And I think like this movie, you know, really lets him like display that.
I love that he's had this like comeback since he did Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it became this like phenomenal hit, and everybody was talking about it, and he won like an Oscar for it. And now he's just in like everything. He was in like season 2 of Loki, you know, he's just popping up all over the place in so many different projects. And it's really cool to see him kind of get like a lead role in something like this. That's just really cool. You know, this is literally somebody from our childhoods, you know?
Yeah, no, really awesome. Love to see it. I'm looking forward to this movie. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Again, like, it's interesting, like, it's funny because, like, I saw these two trailers back to back, independent from the playlist that you created.
So, yeah, it came out like the same day.
Yeah, it was weird because, like, I saw Love Hurts first, and then I saw that also on my feed, and I was like, oh, interesting. And they both look like really cool concepts.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for both of those. That's it for our On Beat section, and now we're going to be moving on to full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, as usual, we're going to be talking about Agatha All Along and the Penguin. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Agatha All Along Episode 6, Familiar by Thy Side, and the Penguin Episode 5, Homecoming. Last week, we talked about Agatha All Along. The episode, it had all these good milestone points. The landmarks were there, but the road was uneven.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's kind of the analogy we were going for. Like, it had these big moments. And these cool moments.
I just, like,
but it was like, it felt sloppy.
I felt like the energy from the pilot was like gone. It was like I was really amped after the pilot, and then like the next couple episodes I kind of like lost that enthusiasm because I feel like the show just lost that energy and got into this really formulaic, like, okay, new trial, and it's like, we get them into wacky costumes and do the trial thing. And it felt like the pilot was so much more creative with the crime drama spoof and like everything. And I felt like, oh man, they were doing like so much with that pilot. And man, I don't know, they lost it. And this brings that energy back. They don't do like anything crazy. This is like very different from the rest of the show, where this is like
the grounded
like,
episode.
Yeah, this is the grounded. This is a straightforward, dramatic episode focused entirely on Billy Kaplan, who we know to this point as Teen, and more of his backstory and how he got to the point to being on the road with Agatha. There isn't any camp in this. There isn't any flamboyant costumes or detective show spoofs or anything. This is just like the campiest thing is when they bring back Ralph Bonner in the middle of the episode. Yeah, his performance is super over the top.
But it should be. I think it was great.
Yeah, I think it was fantastic. Yeah, but it was also, that was like the closest it comes this episode to like being campy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was like one of the best episodes of the series yet.
You know what this is? This is the same showrunner doing this that did WandaVision. I mean, in essence, this is basically WandaVision season 2. You know, that's kind of what this is. And WandaVision season 3 is in development too, and it's neither of these. You know, it's another separate show.
Vision Quest.
Yeah, but this is basically like WandaVision season 2. There was 2 episodes in WandaVision that kind of broke from the structure. There was the one where the one girl, I can't remember her name, got kicked out of the Hex.
Yes.
Wanda kicked her out, and then
Monica Rambeau.
Yeah, and then it went all the way back to the blip with her and when she lost her mom, and went through like all of this stuff that kind of set her up to how she ended up in the Hex. Right. And then there was another episode at the end of WandaVision that was about Agatha going through Wanda's memories to try to find out where she awoken to her power and stuff, to figure out kind of how her power works. And this is kind of like along those lines of an episode. Like, it feels structurally like that. This is the episode where you find out why shit's going on the way shit's going on. And I really liked the way they handled explaining Billy Maximoff / Billy Kaplan, like how that works out. I really dug the way they did that, because we knew that this was Billy Maximoff before we even saw a screenshot of the show, because it had leaked. It's unfortunate, but it happened. It leaked. We already knew that. And through the show, they've been like hinting, oh, who could he be? Who could he be?
I didn't even need the leak to know that this was going to be Billy Kaplan Maximoff. I mean, it was pretty obvious. Random character named Teen. I mean, the whole thing's a sequel to WandaVision.
They did set up a red herring that it could be Agatha's son, you know?
Yeah, they did. They tried.
Yeah, but like, it was leaked to us, so we knew it. There's certain things that were obvious, but we knew it. But the way they handled it is excellent, because it's like, well, how do you do this? The Hex is gone. Everybody's gone from that. How does this work? And it's like, okay, well, in the Hex, Billy kind of had very similar powers to his mom.
Yes.
You know, he's kind of got the psychic stuff going on, some of the witchy stuff going on, some mind reading as well. So all those aspects are kind of going on. And the way they did this, it's kind of dark, where they have this kid, he's at his bar mitzvah, which is great casting, works perfectly for this, because Joe Locke looks like he could be simultaneously 13 or 25. He just has one of those faces where he looks like he could be 13, but he also looks like he could be an adult. So it just kind of worked that, like, this starts off with him at his bar mitzvah, and you're like, okay, well, what's going on? Like, okay, it's his mom and dad, but they're not there. So what's going on with that? Like, and then at his bar mitzvah, he encounters a fortune teller. And surprise, surprise, it's Lilia, Patty LuPone's character.
So, spoiler, he encounters, we see cameos from all the witches on the Witches' Road in this episode.
But the important thing is that Lilia is the one that placed this sigil on him.
Sigil, yes. So that was the big question since the first episode, is like, okay, like, who placed the sigil?
Yeah, and then we also know from comments that Lilia made when they found out that he had a sigil on him, that even the person that cast it wouldn't remember.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And that becomes an important factor, because she immediately forgets him after placing the sigil, and she places it after she reads his palm and says that his lifeline is split in two, and notices something's very weird, and she's not telling him everything about that. And then right after that, that his bar mitzvah gets interrupted because they get a report that something's happening at Westview. It's Westview, right? Is it the name of the town?
Yeah, it's Westview, yeah. That's the name of the town.
Yeah.
Well,
So something's going on at Westview with the hacks, and everybody needs to get moving, they need to get out of there. And they're getting out of there, and then they see the hex, and they get distracted, and they get into a car accident. And Billy dies.
Yeah, he dies
hear
in
his
the car
heartbeat
accident.
stop. And then he wakes up screaming Tommy. And it's like, oh shit, he took over this kid's body. Like, he found this vessel, this empty vessel, and took over it and inhabited this kid's life. And now we know, like, what he's going on the road for, everything that he's going for. He's going to get his brother back.
Yeah, so he's on the road to find Tommy. So it's interesting. So Billy Maximoff. So Billy Kaplan was a real person.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like an alias. So it's interesting to see that Billy Maximoff came back in the body of like this dead teenager.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's got these like sad kind of overtones and stuff because he's dealing with Billy Kaplan's parents. Like, he's living with them still. It's not like he just like got in the body and took off and disappeared,
Right.
Like,
yeah.
he's living Billy's life and, spent like 3 years with them and he's grown up with them and spending movie nights with them. But there's this like distance because he knows that he's not really their son. And so there's this like weird kind of like sadness that kind of permeates. This is kind of the same thing that made WandaVision so good for me, is the way it like played on the kind of what Wanda's emotions would be, and not just like the gimmick of what she's doing in the moment, but like why she's in this place emotionally.
Yeah.
And they're playing this similarly, but in a different way.
And so he's, and so he's looking for answers as to, like who he is, why he is, what he's about. And he's doing it. So he's looking for these answers. And eventually, through a meeting with Ralph Bonner, these questions, this search leads him to Agatha.
You're going to see so many Boner Family Reunion t-shirts.
Yeah.
Because we get like a replay of the scene where he encounters Agatha when she's like in her detective story. But instead of like dressed up as a detective and doing all this stuff, she's just like in her house wearing a Boner Family Reunion shirt.
Yeah. We see the whole scene from like his perspective. Because at pilot we were seeing everything from her perspective, which was she was enchanted to believe that like all this stuff was happening. And so seeing it from his perspective, it looks like really silly.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in the pilot we saw him like chanting the spell and we think it's kind of framed like, oh, he's doing this, like he's breaking her out of the spell. And then we see like really in reality all he's doing is like just telling her like what he's seeing. That scene, like in the pilot, that scene when she puts the pictures in front of him, we see it from her perspective, it's pictures of a dead body. And then when he points out that they're not, they change into like, the pictures of the garden. And that's when she starts to realize that things aren't real. And we're like, oh, gee, he's breaking her out of it. And like, no, it's like he's just confused. He's just sitting there like, because like he's seeing it from his perspective now. They were always pictures of like some random front yard, and he's just confused. Like he's saying these are just pictures of somebody's yard. What are you talking about? That's just a painting. Mm-hmm. Like he's just pointing out the obvious.
Yeah.
But he knows like as soon as he says it, he knows like it starts to snap her back to reality.
Yeah. I think it's a great episode. I think they just nailed the tone of his character. I'm really enjoying the actor in this role and really enjoying his performance as the character. I liked him from the pilot, but I like him a lot more now, like as you kind of really get an understanding of who he is. Yeah, it's reinvigorated the series that was kind of having a little bit of a downslide.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That is it for Agatha All Along, episode 6. And now we're going to be moving on to The Penguin, episode 5. This is called Homecoming. And this follows up the strongest episode of The Penguin so far, which was episode 4. And it really has no place to go but down. And it does go down. It isn't as good as episode 4. It just isn't.
It's solid. It's
still
solid.
Good
it advances the story. It advances...
Oh, there's like a lot of shit happens.
Yeah, a lot of shit happens. I'm not as down on the episode as you are. You're weirdly down on this episode.
I'm not down on the episode. It's just like, that's the hard thing about when you have like an episode early in a season that's like an obvious standout. Like a really, like I'm worried about the same thing with Agatha.
Right.
That, like the next episode's going to be kind of dull. It's going to be like, okay. Because you have these big episodes where like you learn a lot of information and you have a hook that's really cleverly done. done, and you just have this expertly done depiction of this kind of idea, and then you have to settle back in to like the regular narrative.
Yeah,
And it's kind of a downer.
Which is like, we're bringing things to a head, the conflict between Oswald and Sofia Falcone, or Sofia Gigante now, where like she killed off the Falcones, and she's making moves to become like the boss of this crime family now, and she's rebranding, and she kills the one guy, the underboss, Johnny Beatty,
Yeah, just right in front of everybody. Just shoots him in the head.
Because he was questioning her, you
yeah.
know?
I think she was planning on doing that all along. Like
Oh, yeah.
I think based on the way he was reacting to what she was saying, I think they had come to an agreement and she was reneging on it, knowing that he was going to react so that she could kill him in that moment.
Right.
This is her plan. And she does it. She takes him out, and it's like, oh, okay, so she kept him on just long enough to like kind of steal his credibility.
Yeah.
And then she kills him, and she brings everybody
She basically
to heal
used
very
him
quickly.
to legitimize her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She brings everybody to heal very quickly with the promise of like better fortune and these people that just were never kind of accepted. None of the people that are gathered around her are made men. They're all like low-level pawns, and she's like taking them in and saying like, well, now's your time. Don't think of this as like, oh, the family you worked for is gone. Think about it as like, you're in a new family now that actually cares about you and that you're going to be a big part of. And so she's able to make this big move. We also have other big key deaths this episode.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Meanwhile, like Oswald sees an opening with the Maronis to get the mushrooms back. And that's basically by kidnapping their son, Taj, basically holding him for ransom for the mushrooms. Oz arranges this meetup with Nadia, Taj's mother, arranges a handoff basically, Taj for the mushrooms. It goes sideways, of course, because, Nadia like sets up an ambush where she gets her son back, and, she has Maroni goons like shoot at Oz, try to kill him. That doesn't work out. Oz had already had it set up. He had a gasoline trail running from him to Taj. All he does is he lights it and he sets them both on fire and kills them.
Yeah.
But in the process,
murders and watches them burn to death too. Like, watches them burn to death with a smile on his face.
Yeah, just like clinging to each other as they burn to death. Oh yeah, it's a horrific scene. But unfortunately, Oz miscalculates because that sets off the sprinkler system, the fire, extinguisher system, and that stuff completely ruins the mushroom supply. Like only like a few left are still good.
Mm-hmm.
Completely ruins his supply. So he's there. He's trying to get his mother to safety in the meantime, because he knows the Maronis and Sofia Falcone, Gigante, are going to be gunning for him.
Yeah, he starts to. This is what Oz does. He'll make a big move. He's good on his feet. He's good at like adapting and making things, and he's good at making like really big moves on his feet like that. And he does a big move, but then he's like, oh fuck, the repercussions of that move, And he's completely unprepared for those repercussions because these plans come like you said, he's on his feet,
Right, yeah, these plans come in the moment, and he just does it.
Yeah. And so then he's like, oh shit, like everything's going wrong. So he has Victor take his mom and take her into hiding. And he takes her to Crown Point, which is the neighborhood that he went in that was just completely devastated by the floods from the Batman, the ones that the Riddler set off at the end of the Batman. And he takes her there, and then it's just everything's starting to kind of fall apart for us. Like he made a big move, but now he's got, Salvatore Maroni's gunning for him. Sophia's gunning for him.
Speaking of Salvatore Maroni isn't supposed to be gunning for Oz because Oz had it set up for a prison guard to kill him, which he attempts to do, but he survives the attempt, but Salvatore survives the attempt on his life and actually manages to escape prison. And so in like one of the last scenes of the episode, we see Sofia visit him, and now they're conspiring together to get back at Oz.
Yeah, because now Oz is not only screwed over Salvatore, but he's killed his wife and kid.
Yes.
Which they did a really strong job of pointing out how much, much of these are all like, sociopathic mafiosos, but he like legitimately loves his family.
Yes.
And so he's like in severe mourning right now. And yeah, so that Oz set himself up to bring enemies together against him, which is puts him in a very bad situation, and everything's kind of going bad for him at that point. Like, he's trying to hide out from him. He goes to his mistress kind of rejects him. She's like,
yes,
we promised not to fuck each other over. And that's what made us work, is that we weren't fucking each other over, but now you fucked me over. Like, we can't do this anymore. Oz is like, put off by that. He goes to where his mom is in hiding. His mom is like, rejects him too. And so now, like, he's just kind of at his lowest point, and he goes out and he's talking to Victor, and he's going through the coins in a coin jar, and he gets an idea. Because he finds a token for like was it a trolley system or something, like an underground trolley system or subway that is gone. That's like out of commission, that like nobody really knows about. It's just kind of there. And like they make a point of like Victor not knowing about it and stuff. Like, even though he grew up in Crown Point, had no idea this thing existed. And they find this giant underground area. I love that. That's like one of my favorite tropes from old movies.
Right. Oh,
like,
yeah.
Whether it be like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or like Ghostbusters.
Just like,
Ghostbusters 2. It's like the secret underground area that's like hugely developed and...
Yeah, well, it's like this abandoned subway system, or trolley carts,
Another example would be like the hotel in Angel,
Right, oh yeah.
I love that kind of stuff.
And Oz determines, like, this is the perfect place to set up shop. This is the perfect place to cultivate the mushrooms that he has.
Nobody knows about it. The tunnels lead everywhere in the city.
Yeah.
They can, like, go in and out from, like, anywhere. It just gives them just a great position. And that ends up being where we kind of leave things off. It's like, okay, well, now we know how Oz is going to push forward.
Yes.
And become a literal underworld boss.
Yeah, he's going to be a literal underworld boss, yeah. The penguin lair.
Yeah.
He's got his own Robin now. He's got his own penguin lair, penguin cave.
Yeah, he lost the penguin mobile.
He lost the penguin mobile, yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, solid episode. I mean, yeah, it's not as good as last week, but I mean, last week was like a really fantastic character study of Sophia, and this is like more, plot focused.
Yeah,
well, fine. Yeah.
What I was saying is, like, it's not that the episode disappoints me or that I don't like the episode. It's just that you can't really even follow up an episode like last week's and like best it, or like continue that momentum. Like, there's going to be a down. There always is, and that's what this was. This was the down that followed it, and it had to be in order to get back into the plot. It's just a little disappointing because it's like, oh man, what if they could have kept that momentum going? What if they could have pulled another surprise on us to really make this episode sing the way the last one did, But that's almost impossible to do. So I don't blame the show for like any failing or anything. It stands out because the last episode was so good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree.
But that's it for our discussion this week, our full spoiler segment, and that's it for the podcast. Next week, we are going to again be talking about more Agatha All Along and the Penguin. And again, I'll say this every week until it happens, and perhaps the Nintendo Switch successor.
Yeah, perhaps.
But that's it until next week. So thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. Did you also want to plug your Blue Sky?
Yeah, I'm at Blue Sky. Same at Voxel Hero, BlueSky.com.
I don't remember what my Blue Sky is.
It's Tyson Gifford.
Oh, it is the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So at Tyson Gifford on Blue Sky, at Voxel Hero on Blue Sky, or Twitter, both of them.
But you haven't posted anything on Blue Sky?
Yeah, I don't think I've posted anything there. I've just followed some people, and I haven't been on there in a while.
Right. It's a lot more active now. I say get on a train.
Yeah.
Get on the train.
Might be worth checking out again. Twitter became unusable for me. I took it off my phone.
Twitter is awful. Like, if you're looking for, like, a social media app, I say Blue Sky is it now.
Yeah, but you can follow us there. You can also check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up a container store for any of the podcast episodes, scroll down to the bottom paragraph. You'll find all of the social links, our RSS feed for the podcast, our SoundCloud page, our YouTube page, our Facebook pages, all that kind of stuff. It's all there, so you can check that out there. You can also subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel, so check that out as well. Again, links on the website if you go into the container store for a podcast episode. It's all there. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.